Everybody, welcome. We're going to get started with our program now. Welcome to our 10th anniversary celebration with our very special guest tonight, Mr. Leonard Pitts. My name is Michael Gannon. I'm currently the acting co-CEO of PGCMLS, and in my real job, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Support Services. And I think I have the best job in the whole library system because I'm the one that gets to oversee new construction. And I was here 10 years ago when we opened the South Bowie Library, and it looks just as beautiful today as the day that it opened, I think, yes. Whenever I go to places across the county, I always hear, when people hear I'm from the library, they always say, "Oh, South Bowie." So South Bowie, I love South Bowie Library. It's like our iconic library. We've built new libraries since, but South Bowie is still a big favorite of the community. And I see Miss Ingrid Turner back there. I'm so glad you came. I'm going to recognize you in a little bit. But I just wanted to tell you a couple things about the South Bowie Library. This was our first modern library. We wanted to do things that we hadn't done before in this county, so this was our first drive-up window. This was our first computer lab. This was our first fireplace, and I have a little story I want to share about the fireplace. So when we were doing the design for the library, we said to the architect, we want a fireplace, because fireplaces were becoming very popular in libraries. So we said, we want a fireplace. So he said, okay. So back in those days, you didn't have the 3D renderings. You didn't have what it looked like when it was going to be done like we have with all the new libraries now. So I came to a construction meeting, and they had just framed out the fireplace. And I remember to this day, I came through that door, and I came over here, and I was like, what is this thing? It looks like you could roast a pig in there. And the architect looked at me and said, "You wanted a fireplace?" And I said, "Yeah, like in your house, you know, like one of these kind of fireplaces." And he said, "Well, we've made it the focal point of the library." And it has become the focal point of the library. In fact, our customers want us to run it all year round. And we have to be, no, we want to do it like when it's cold, we'll run it. But it is, when people talk about the South Bowie Library, it's, you know, the one with the fireplace. So that is our, the iconic feature here in this library. I do want to recognize former council member Ingrid Turner. Please stand up, stand up. Ms. Turner was the driving force behind this library. It wouldn't have been built without her. She was determined it was going to be built. She made me meet with her every other week, and she would say, "Michael, when's the library going to be ready? When's the library going to be ready?" And then she would say, "Do you have everything you want?" And I would be like, "Well, could I have this?" And she was like, "I'll get it for you." So thank you, thank you. This library was your lifetime achievement, and I appreciate that. Not that I want to say you haven't had any other lifetime achievements, but this is the one I know. So thank you for that, and I'm glad you came. We also have another council member with us today, Mr. Todd Turner, who is going to, if you will come up here. Thank you. He's got us a proclamation. I love proclamations, so we're going to have a proclamation. I want to bring up the president of our board of library trustees, Tony Smith, and then my co-CEO, acting CEO, Nick Brown, who is also in his real job, our COO for communications and outreach. So I'll give you this. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's see if this works. First of all, good evening, everyone. Glad to see everyone being here with us this evening. So you actually have now 2 former county council members. For those who don't know, I got nominated for another position and got confirmed yesterday. And as part of that process, I had to step down after 7 years, 9 months. No, just kidding. So technically, I'm here in my Joe civilian capacity, but don't tell anybody, okay? Thank you, Michael. Obviously, when we came in, we started talking about saying it's really been 10 years. And if I look back 10 years ago, obviously we worked very closely with our then county council member, Ingrid Turner. And just for those who know, there's no relation. As I used to say in my campaign, same great last name, same commitment to public service. We're not related, not a brother, not a husband. But actually this was, while she was at the head of doing this, this was a labor of love of the entire community here in South Bowie. And so I just want to recognize I don't see any faces that I recall from 10, probably 15 years ago, even more than that, for us to get here. But I do want to recognize some of the people who are part of this facility being here 10 years later. Obviously, we had, I was on the city of Bowie at that time. Obviously, I know we advocated for it, working through Councilwoman Turner's office. We also had the South Bowie Citizens Association, Mr. Russ Adeo and the members of that group who were an integral part of pushing this and advocating for this new library. Among those others were Joan Christian, if you remember her. Unfortunately passed away several years ago, but she was at the forefront of this effort as well to bring us. And then obviously my colleagues at that time on the city council represented this area during the project, including former council members Mike Lowes and Isaac Trout. So this has been a group effort. And I know, actually, Councilmember Turner, come up here. You should be up here too. This is your baby. Come on. And I have to say, and I'm sure Michael remembers, this was a very unique partnership actually to build this. There wasn't always sometimes controversy about the development that occurs in Prince George's County, but we knew this as Hall Station Road would be kind of a mixed-use center, meaning that we would have the library as the anchor. Obviously, we'd have some of the commercial activity that we have now, almost 10 years later. And then obviously on the other side, we have the community here, residential community. So it was a unique partnership because the developer who wanted to do the residential and wanted to do the commercial, we got them engaged in doing the construction here to try to save the citizens of Prince George's County some money as part of that. So I think that's worked out. I don't know that we've used that as a model anywhere else, but I can say, as Michael has said, the South Bowie Branch of the Prince George's County Municipal Library System has become the standard for library construction here in Prince George's County over this last 10 years. So we were the vanguard of having these type of facilities here in Prince George's County, and I think our residents appreciate that we've been able to move forward with other libraries here. So I'll be brief in that. So we're here to obviously to hear Mr. Pitts and his reflections, but we did prepare, when I was in that capacity, I did prepare a proclamation on behalf of the Prince George's County Council, just recognizing the 10th year anniversary of the South Bowie branch of the Prince George's County Municipal Library System. So I'll just read the last one. The last two anyway. Whereas the Prince George's County Council is honored to be part of this important celebration of the South Bowie Branch Library and recognize the Pulitzer Prize winning Leonard Pitts Jr. for exemplary contributions to our community and to our country. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Prince George's County Council, that the South Bowie Library is congratulated on its 10th birthday celebration and is wished continued success into the future. And as I said, this has become the standard bearer for our libraries here in Prince George's County. So I was glad to be here 10 years ago. Hopefully I'll be here 10 years from now when you do your 20th birthday as well. I want to thank, obviously, former County Council member Ingrid Turner for her work on this, because without her and the others that I mentioned, we would not be here today. Lastly, I want to thank the staff here at the Prince George's County Municipal Library here at South Bowie. And the board of trustees as well. They come to us every single year as part of our budget to approve funding for our library system. And my colleagues, former colleagues on the county council, and I understand the importance of these, not only the facilities that are here, and obviously we love the facilities here in South Bowie, but those who work here and provide the life for those who come in, whether they be adults, whether they be teenagers, whether they be kids. I always remember the tree where we took our photo when this was opened up 10 years ago, and how that's the lifeblood of this facility. So congratulations. Congratulate you on your 10th anniversary, and hopefully you'll be continuing to be a lifeblood of this community in South Bowie. So there we go. Come on, get in, everybody. No.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Thank you. Yes, and I do want to echo what Mr. Turner said. This was a grassroots effort as well. This library, every time that the county council and the county executive at that time would come to any kind of community meeting, there would be folks here, from South Bowie saying they wanted a library. We were getting ready to build the Laurel Library, and this library was so popular because the community really advocated that this library came first. And this library was built in the middle of the Great Recession, and I think we kept construction alive in Prince George's County because contractors were vying with each other to underbid each other to build this library. And you will see things in this library we can no longer afford. There's real wood everywhere, not laminate. There's enough stainless steel here probably to build a space shuttle. The steps going upstairs are solid slabs of slate. So we really got our money's worth from this during the recession. So it is a beautiful library. It continues to be beautiful, and I can't wait to see it in another 10 years. So our next part of the program is I'm going to introduce John Pfeiffer, who is our Foundation Donor Development and Grants Officer. I probably have it wrong. He has one of the longest titles in the library system. So I'm going to invite John up here for our next part. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, Michael. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Leonard Pitts this evening. Leonard Pitts was born and raised in Southern California. He was awarded a degree in English from the University of Southern California at the age of 19, having entered school at 15 on a special honors program. In a career that now spans 46 years, Leonard Pitts Jr. has worked as a columnist, a college professor, a radio professor, and a lecturer. But those are just the job titles. If you ask him what he does, what he is, he'll tell you now that what he would have told you then. He is a writer. Millions of readers are glad that he is. I am glad that he is. In addition to winning a Pulitzer Prize for commentary, Pitts has won multiple awards from the Society of Professional Journalists, the National Association of Black Journalists, the National Society of Newspaper Columnists, and the American Society of Newspaper Editors. Twice each week, millions of newspaper readers throughout the country seek out his rich and uncommonly resonant voice. And twice each week throughout my own newspaper career as an editor and as a publisher, I have placed his column on the opinion pages of my paper. For the past 27 years, he and his wife have called Bowie their home. I am honored to introduce Leonard Pitts and ask you to join me in welcoming him to our 10th birthday party.
Good evening, Bowie. Good evening. How you doing, Bowie? Beautiful Bowie. Thank you very much, John, for that wonderful introduction. Before I begin, I'd like to, all the political leaders have been called out. I need to call out my leader, which is my wife. My wife, Marilyn, is here. I've got 3 cousins here, which is amazing. My cousin Karen, my cousin Ivory, my cousin Chandrell. I almost forgot your name, Sean. That's bad. And I've got a play daughter here somewhere in the house. Where are you at, Melinda? Yeah, there she is. So, you know, I brought my own audience in case things don't go well. The best advice that I was ever given about public speaking went as follows. The mind cannot absorb what the behind cannot endure. So with that in mind, I'm going to endeavor not to tax your patience. But I do want to spend a few minutes talking about what I consider to be the gravest crisis of our time. And it is not climate change. It is not political polarization. It is something worse. I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about that. And while you're thinking about that, I want to tell you a story. Many years ago, while changing planes in Atlanta, a certain traveler felt an urgent call from nature. So he found the men's room and walked in. And immediately he pulled up short because he looked at the wall and he saw no urinals. And the traveler fumed angrily. Was this some kind of newfangled architectural experiment? What's a men's room without no urinals? He thought that, somebody had lost their mind. What fool thought this was a good idea? But the traveler was in a hurry, so, he had to make his plane. So finally he just shrugged and he found a stall and he did what he had come to do. And when he came out of the stall, he found a woman there standing at the sink, washing her hands. And the traveler started fuming all over again. What in the world is wrong with this stupid woman? How has she wandered into the men's room by mistake? And it's only when he noticed the look of absolute shock on her face that it hit him. Oops. She wasn't the one who made a mistake. And the traveler got out of that women's room so fast that his shadow had to run to catch up. Yes, it actually happened. And ever since it did, I've made it a point to check very carefully the sign on the door before I use the public facilities. But after I got over being mortified, it only took, a couple of years and some therapy, but after I got over being mortified, that episode struck me as a textbook example of what it looks like when we fail to be critical thinkers. That is, when we are unwilling or unable to test our assumptions and then to change our assumptions when the facts prove them wrong. As you'll recall, my operating assumption was, this is the men's room. I was given two excellent reasons to question that assumption. No urinal, woman washing her hands. But I did not question that assumption. Instead, I interpreted the new information in such a way that it fell into line with what I believed to be true. Instead of bringing my assumption in line with the facts, I sought to bend the facts until they fit my assumption. I didn't give up that false assumption until I absolutely had no other choice. I think this woman was probably going to call the police. Hey, there's my son. Hey, son, I'm sorry. Forgot, either he had slipped in or he wasn't there when I was calling people out. But anyway, I did not give up that assumption until I absolutely had no choice. Unfortunately, friends and neighbors, that's how all our human minds tend to work. And you don't have to take my word for it. This was quantified as far back as 1979 by researchers at Stanford University. They found that not only does confronting the average person with proof that a given belief is incorrect not change that person's mind, but it actually tends to make them double down on the false belief. Multiple studies have since found the same result. You and I are apparently hardwired to disregard inconvenient truths. But though that's not new, what is new is the degree to which that predisposition has come to define our civic life. You and I, after all, have the great challenge of being alive at a time when facts have become multiple choice and available in various flavors. We are alive in an era in which more and more of us feel no obligation to trust information just because it comes from a source that was once deemed authoritative, especially if the information challenges what we already believe. The trend lines are not encouraging either. A Gallup poll conducted earlier this year found that just 16% of Americans have confidence in newspaper reporting. You can imagine how that made me feel as a newspaper reporter. But if you think that's bad, well, only 11% trust television news. But it's not just news media whose credibility is on the decline. Public trust in government is near an all-time low, according to a Pew survey. Gallup tells us that trust in teachers fell from 75% to another all-time low of 64% in just the 2 years from 2020 to 2022. And as for trust in science, well, I won't give you a poll, I'll just give you a name: Anthony Fauci. I submit that the problem is not that any of those entities has suddenly become less trustworthy over the years, but rather that many of us have become less willing to trust anything. They have embraced the idea that facts are something you may pick and choose. In the movie A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson famously snarls, "You can't handle the truth." But in 2022, it seems more accurate to say, you don't want the truth. Not if it gets in the way of your preferred belief. The threat of that kind of thinking could not be more obvious. Simply put, you can't run a country that way. If you and I have the same pool of facts in common, then we have the basis for a good faith debate on the best solution to our problems as a nation. Now, we may disagree on which facts are most important. We may even interpret those facts in different ways, but so long as we are working with the same facts, we can at least have a discussion on how to solve the problem. But if your facts are over here and mine are way over there, if we can't agree that an apple is an apple, or that 2 + 2 does in fact equal 4, then we have no basis for good faith debate because we are, in a real sense, not even speaking the same language. In recent years, we have begun to see the concrete results of this kind of thinking, and they are deeply troubling. We saw those results back in 2010 when Terry Larkin, a U.S. Army doctor, was court-martialed and sent to jail. I believe he eventually lost his medical license when he refused to deploy to Afghanistan on the grounds that Barack Obama was born in Kenya and therefore was not a legitimate U.S. president. We saw them in 2012 and 2013 when conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones began telling the parents of children murdered in school shootings and mass shootings that their children never really existed, that the dead bodies were not dead bodies at all, but so-called crisis actors conducting, quote, false flag operations. We saw them in 2015 when the governor of Texas put the state guard on alert because of rumors that a joint U.S. military exercise in his state was actually part of a plot by the federal government to, and I quote, conquer Texas. We saw those results in 2016 when Edgar Welch, a 28-year-old man from North Carolina, shot up a pizzeria here in Washington, D.C. because he believed it was a front for a child molestation ring being run out of the basement by Hillary Clinton. We saw it at the height of the pandemic as we, the people, were unable to agree on following basic safety precautions advocated by virtually every mainstream medical professional in the face of a global pandemic that would eventually kill over 1 million Americans. We saw it on January 6th of 2021 when hundreds of people descended on the U.S. Capitol, an armed mob intent on capturing Congress and murdering the vice president because they believed a cockamamie theory that the last president lost his job in a rigged election. And even after that, a third of all Americans and a majority of all Republicans still believe that cockamamie theory, still believe the election of 2020 was stolen from the 45th president. Mind you, they have no proof of this. They have none. To the contrary, a growing body of evidence strongly suggests that any cheating or attempted cheating was done by the president himself and or his representatives. He was recorded, for instance, trying to strong-arm the Georgia Secretary of State into committing voter fraud. This fact notwithstanding, tens of millions of Americans continue to believe the cheater was cheated. They believe this despite the claim being rejected by dozens of courts. They believe it even though partisan auditors hired by the president's own party in Arizona found that the election there was fair. They believe it past the point of common sense and diminishing returns. In January of last year, they believed it enough to smash windows and break doors, to injure 140 police officers, to vandalize statues and offices, to smear their own feces on the wall of the U.S. Capitol. And they believe it enough now to rationalize, to make excuses, to call people who engaged in the greatest attack on the U.S. Capitol since the War of 1812 martyrs and political prisoners, and even to compare them to tourists. Abraham Lincoln said 23 years before the Civil War that no external foe could ever destroy America, that, quote, if destruction be our lot, we ourselves must be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. I submit that this is the point to which we have now come. We are a nation of lunatic conspiracy theories and violent extremism, a nation where the ignorant preach to the ill-informed, and an aide to the last president said straight out, there's no such thing as facts. We are witnessing nothing less than a secession from objective reality by a large portion of our fellow citizens, a civil war of ideas and ideals in which the brazen lie carries the same weight as the actual fact, provided it is said loudly enough and satisfies the listener's emotional need. Which brings us back again then to America's gravest problem. And again, you may think the crisis that I refer to as the gravest problem is the pandemic that killed so many millions of Americans, or you may think there's nothing graver than the climate crisis that has brought us 100-year storms, so-called 100-year storms, and droughts and fires and floods on a regular basis. But the crisis that I'm talking about is greater than those. It's greater than those in any other crisis that you care to name because it feeds into all of them. It is the crisis that makes every other crisis worse. And yet at the same time, it's a crisis that people seldom talk about, one that generates few front-page headlines or worried editorials, nor shouting matches among TV talking heads, nor action plans from would-be political leaders. I call it the misinformation crisis. And here I want to be clear. When I say misinformation, I'm not talking about differences of interpretation where two of us look at the same thing and come to two different and entirely subjective conclusions. No, I'm talking about misinformation, where knowable and verifiable fact is denied, whether out of ignorance or more frequently these days out of intent. The misinformation crisis is a national emergency. If we do not begin to take it seriously, it just might be the death of us. Again, take COVID-19. Without the misinformation crisis, it was a deadly pandemic that ravages the planet, killing in obscene numbers and disrupting the global economy. With the misinformation crisis, it is all of that, and we are paralyzed in our ability to respond to it, hampered by the fact that unanimity of purpose has become impossible to achieve because everyone with a Facebook account or a cousin's friend in Trinidad is suddenly more of an expert than people who have spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years or more studying viruses. The real experts find themselves struggling to even be heard over a cacophony of social media experts from the University of Google claiming that masks don't work, vaccines turn you into a human magnet, and malaria medicine, horse dewormer, or bleach will knock the virus right out, and if none of that works, try sticking an ultraviolet light up your nose. Take climate change. The misinformation crisis causes us to waste valuable time engaging in what the young activist Greta Thunberg calls blah, 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 even as the planet careens past the point of no return, and we're now told that we must learn to live with what we could have prevented, and even at that, some of us still refuse to act with the urgency the situation demands, preferring instead to take comfort in misinformation. Indeed, back in August, I believe it was, of this year, a United Nations panel issued a report stating that we have reached the point of catastrophe, quote unquote, code red for humanity. And sure enough, some climate denier went on Fox to assure viewers that the UN just wants, for some reason he did not even bother to explain, to confiscate your cars. You're being conned, he said, if you're falling for this UN report. This kind of nonsense has been going on for over 50 years. Which means that for over 50 years, instead of sustained bipartisan action, we have allowed the few holdouts among climatologists to muddy the waters with misleading or downright bogus claims, while news media magnify those claims and give them credence in a way we'd never do with somebody who argued, for example, that the moon is made of cheese. And after half a century of this, we find ourselves at the point the scientists have been warning us about for generations. Again, 100-year storms happen every year. Blue sky flooding in South Beach. California burning to a crisp. A chunk of ice bigger than the state of Rhode Island breaking off of Antarctica. You can see it all happening right before your eyes, and yet the liars and deniers keep lying and denying. You can almost hear the ghost of Groucho Marx. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? So yes, I submit to you that the misinformation crisis is the gravest crisis this country faces. And yet it is also, paradoxically, the one that could be most simply solved. You could fix it in 2 words: think again. By which I mean, we have to once again learn, we have to once again require one another, and most importantly, we have to once again teach our children the importance of gathering and processing and following reliable information. And if you've been sitting out there these last few minutes wondering, okay, that's nice, but what does any of this have to do with the 10th anniversary of the South Bowie Branch of the Prince George's County Public Library? Well, look around you. You are surrounded by books and other sources of factual information. More to the point, you're surrounded by people whose professional mission is to help you and me, free of charge, no less. Amen for the library. To help you and me, free of charge, to locate that information. I consider that a minor miracle. I consider that a reason for hope. So I thank heaven for the public library and for the public librarians. I am thankful for them at all times, but I am especially thankful for them in times like these. In times like these, a library is not just a library. A library is not just a repository of books and magazines where you go for help with your homework or to read the daily paper or to hear some guy give a speech. In times such as these, the library is a fortress. It is a redoubt of intellectual freedom. It is a stronghold of curiosity, investigation, education, imagination, and other important cognitive functions that have largely gone by the wayside in this era of anti-thinking and rising ignorance. It is a place where facts matter. And again, it's not just the building and not just the books and magazines and the leaflets and the computers in the building, although those are all vitally important, but it is also, and perhaps most importantly, the people who staff the building, the people who curate the information. Over the last 30 years, the idea of curated information seems to have fallen into a bit of disrepute. You can blame the internet for that. Some of you may recall how back in the early 1990s, when people were still trying to figure out how to navigate the so-called information superhighway, folks used to talk a lot about how information would now be democratized, which is to say, some of us embraced a vision of the future where information was liberated from curators and gatekeepers, where each of us would have the facts at our fingertips 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hadn't quite worked out that way. I mean, yes, we all have access to the facts 24/7, and that's a great convenience that I would not want to give up. But somehow the people who promoted that utopian vision failed to realize that having access to the facts 24/7 also meant we would have access to the lies 24/7. The deep fakes, the conspiracy theories, the cockamamie nonsense, and the misinformation that has been weaponized for political or geopolitical advantage. And more importantly, that all those things would have access to us. There are those among us who have a vested interest in maintaining that state of affairs. After all, an electorate that is not rooted in facts is an electorate that is more easily divided, swayed, panicked, or stampeded. An electorate that is not rooted in facts is far more susceptible to being moved by an appeal to its fears. It's something we've seen repetitively in recent years. Nor should any of us be surprised that it works so often and it works so well. Ignorance is the best potting soil for fear. It's a state of affairs that should encourage us all to have renewed appreciation for those whose training and professional mission is to curate data and curate information and even to curate entertainment. It is great to be able to wade in a free flow of information and data and entertainment, but if you think it's important that the information be trustworthy so that you can rely on it, so that you can make decisions on it, so that you can know that you know that you know, then maybe you should support the curators of information. By which I mean there's three major curators of information, I think, in our society. One is journalists. We curate information. Two is teachers. Teachers curate it too. But also, please support the curators who work in this building, the librarians. I find it interesting and not at all coincidental that those three professions have been under sustained attack in recent years. Sometimes it has been actual physical attack, as any number of journalists can attest. Dozens of reporters, for example, were arrested, gassed, and beaten by police who knew they were journalists, by the way, during the 2020 protests over George Floyd's murder. One woman lost an eye after being shot by police with a so-called non-lethal round. During the January 6th insurrection, the mob, you may recall, made it a point to destroy news organizations' camera equipment. But the attacks on teachers and librarians, though they are less likely to be physical, they carry consequences that are just as troubling and just as far-reaching. Teachers in many states now labor under laws and regulations that restrict or outright prevent them from discussing everything from America's tortured racial history to the theory of evolution to LGBTQ rights. And librarians, Lord, where to begin? They had a book burning. Can we just stop and say that? They had a book burning in suburban Nashville this year. Some so-called pastor put Harry Potter to the torch because he thought it and books like it would lead children to witchcraft. I suspect it would just lead children to reading, but that's me. Teachers in Palm Beach County, Florida, have been ordered to purge their classroom libraries of books that deal with racism, sexism, and homophobia. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has come out in favor of jailing librarians who allow children access to books that he deems pornographic. And the American Library Association reports that last year, schools, universities, and public libraries like this one saw 1,597 books subjected to attempted or successful bans. 1,597. It was a record. It was the highest since the ALA first started keeping track. And yet, as of August of this year, the total already stood at 1,651. This is already a record year as of August. Now, we're talking about books, dangerous books, like Charlotte's Web. Oh, sorry. We're talking about books like Charlotte's Web, E.B. White's classic 1952 tale about the friendship between a spider and a pig. We're talking about The Hate U Give, Angie Thomas's celebrated 2017 novel about a police shooting of an unarmed black teenager. We're talking about Mouse, Art Spiegelman's Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel about Jewish mice and Nazi cats in the fires of the Holocaust. We're even talking about Dev Pikey's Captain Underpants and the preposterous plight of the purple potty people, about an alternate universe, a time machine, and who knows what all else. I haven't read it. That's the Wikipedia, condensation of the plot. All of them offensive to somebody who thinks a solution is to make the library make the books unavailable to your children and mine. It never seems to occur to those people that it makes more sense to regulate their own children and leave mine alone if they're that scared of what the kids might get from Captain Underpants. More to the point, leave the choice of what goes on the library shelves to the librarians. I would rather trust them to choose what's appropriate for my children than some uptight mother who thinks, and this is actually true, who thinks the nudity of cartoon mice in Spiegelman's book, his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, is going to ruin her precious child. I would rather leave the selection of books to those who understand the importance of people being able to read freely, read bravely, read. But then I'm of the radical conviction that professionals ought to be allowed to do their jobs, period, full stop. Let the reporters report, let the educators educate, and let the librarians library, which is to say, let them stock their shelves with books that they, in their professional judgment, feel readers should have access to. Let them do their jobs as professional curators of information. You and I are fortunate as citizens of Bowie. We have this beautiful library here, just 10 years old. We have another library just a few miles north of here. And heck, we even have the Library of Congress just down the road. I would encourage us not to take any of it for granted. I would encourage us here on this anniversary to appreciate this bounty for the minor miracle it is. And I would encourage us to be vigilant against those who claim the right here and anywhere else to decide what is appropriate for you and me or your child and mine. It is hard to imagine anything more anti-American. So I encourage all of us to respect what we have and to defend what we have right here. Because across the country, again, the trend lines are troubling. Across the country, forces of ignorance and intolerance are feeling empowered and emboldened. But as I say, in the midst of the misinformation crisis, this building and others like it are the fortresses of information. This is where we go to learn, to understand, and thus to resist. If we're going to learn to think again, it's in places like this, it's in buildings like this that it will happen. And it is imperative that we do. You think America can maintain a position of global leadership while marinating in its own ignorance? Think again. You think we are not sacrificing our children's very future on an altar of political hackery? Think again. You think the climate will stop heating, the storms stop storming, the fires stop burning, the droughts stop turning rivers to dirt because some of us deny that it's happening? Think again. You think African Americans will cease demanding justice, cease saying that our lives matter, just because some of us refuse to see? Think again. You think we can navigate the next deadly pandemic because somebody with a Facebook account thinks they know more about virology than a world-renowned virologist? Think again. You think democracy can survive a toxic political environment where people in the other party are not just opponents, but your sworn blood enemies? Think again. You think America can go on like this indefinitely? You think this state of affairs is sustainable? Think again, because it is not. I want you to imagine for a moment that some bizarre cult decides that gravity is a hoax, that we've all been lied to ever since 1687 when Isaac Newton published his law of universal gravitation. Now, you may think that's far-fetched. Who's going to deny gravity, right? I would remind you that there are people among us right now, including NBA All-Star Kyrie Irving, who insist that the earth is flat. And we've known it to be round since the time of Christ. So yeah, imagine somebody decides that gravity doesn't exist, that you can fly if you just believe. They will be corrected in that misconception the moment they step off the edge of the Grand Canyon. Or as my mama used to say, I can show you better than I can tell you. All of us kids, and some of y'all may have had a mom like mine, all of us kids knew what that meant. If you didn't straighten up your act, you were going to be crying hard in a few minutes and not sitting down for a few hours. If truth and fact had a voice, I can imagine them using my mom's words. I can show you better than I can tell you. And if we are smart, we will not push truth and fact to that point. As the man or the woman who stepped off the edge of the Grand Canyon, believing that gravity was a lie, would surely testify as they plummeted toward making a bloody mess on the ground below. Facts don't care about your feelings, and the truth doesn't care what you want to believe. They are what they are regardless. If you think we can continue to ignore that and not pay a fatal price, think again. If you think we can save this country without valuing our reporters, our teachers, and yes, our librarians for the work they do, for the information they curate, for the fact that they make it possible for each of us to be thoughtful and informed human beings, and yes, I implore you, in the name of all that's good, please think again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Pitts. That was really said in such a concise and powerful way that all of us in the library community have been really needing to hear from someone in our community, because the fight has been really extreme throughout the country, but also here in the DMV area. And I think if you haven't been watching the news, it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it is tremendously frightening for everyone that is working in this industry. And our staff members are starting to see more strange things happening and things like that. So please know that we need your support in order to continue doing our work. And it's not just us, it's the entire Maryland Libraries community, it's the entire national community, it's academic libraries, it's school librarians who are getting it even more than public libraries at the moment. So thank you for being a part of this conversation with us that will continue in the weeks and months to come, because we have to band together in order to kind of defend our way of life and freedoms that we hold dear, which, the freedoms need to be strengthened anyways, because we've had struggles with that in this country. But very briefly, want to recognize a few other folks who have joined us today. Would like to give a special shout out to members of our PGCMLS Foundation Board, Linda Washington Douglas, who is immediate past chair. Welcome, Linda. and Ishraga Eltahir, who's also on the board. Any other foundation board members make it here tonight? I'm sure there's some online on the live stream, so thank you to the foundation for their support. Also, thank you, of course, to Tony Smith from our Board of Library Trustees, and just want to make sure everyone is introduced to Megan Sutherland, who is our interim Chief Operating Officer for Public Services, as well as the East Area Director, and this is one of her branches. And a special shout out to everyone on the South Bowie staff for opening the doors. We've had a really exciting day today. Miss Marsha in the back led an awesome story time at 2 o'clock and had me and Megan dancing during the day, which is not our usual thing. So that was really, really special. A couple things before we split to mingle a little bit. If you would like to support the library's work, the PGCMS Foundation has some really cool limited edition merch available in the back, because everyone likes library merch. There's coffee, posters, t-shirts, glassware, as well as some cool South Bowie related materials. Aside from that, want to encourage you all to pick up the bookmarks that were on your chairs. You either got one bookmark that says Rock Band. If you got that one, raise it high, be proud. So Rock Band is our new campaign to promote the importance of the freedom to read. If you scan the QR code on the back or go to our website, you'll learn some of the important facts around the issues that we're facing as a community nationwide. And that website also lists all of the different topics that are happening at the local, state, and federal level where we need the community to pay attention and participate in advancing the work of the library. So please check that out. We even have text message alerts now for the library. So if you are a library nerd and super champion advocate, we will buzz you if you so choose. The other bookmark that you may have gotten is a yellow and red one. It's about a really cool app that we developed called Guide to Indigenous Maryland. We led a statewide project to develop this guide, which is intended to introduce the general public to the really important Native American and Indigenous heritage of all of our communities throughout Maryland and in the Mid-Atlantic region. Prince George's County is leading the way on this work in the state, and we're really proud of that fact. We've had great partners from Anne Arundel County Library and many other libraries in the state. So do check that out. It's a really interesting way to just kind of engage and become more aware of the fact that we are living on lands that belong to people who have been here for hundreds and thousands of years before we arrived. So check that out. Very briefly going to invite Mr. Pitts back up because we have some surprises for him, much to his surprise and chagrin.
That's when I thought I was out. Pull me back in.
Okay. First off, we're going to present you with the limited edition staff Rock Band shirt, since you are one of our heroes. It says Read Band Books. Awesome.
Please read band books. Yeah.
One more.
Thank you.
And this is a very special print for you, celebrating the 10 years of the South Bowie Branch Library with a message from me and Michael on behalf of the team. We're so grateful for all that you've done for our community over the years, locally, nationally, and we're just so blessed to have you in our local family here. And thank you, and keep up the good work. And congrats on your retirement, which we are all very envious of. So without further ado, that's the party, and we hope you have a great time. Thank you to the elected officials, former elected officials. Oh, yes, the best surprise of all. Staff, get your cupcakes first. We have special cupcakes for you. There's also some great South Bowie stickers in the back, as well as Love Your Library stickers. Come up and say hi to any of us on staff. We'd love to get to know you better. And the best thing that you can do if you'd like to stay connected with us, follow us wherever it's meaningful for you to hear from us, whether that's email, social media, those text alerts. And we hope to see you again at any of our branches sometime soon. Oh, and the raffle. Yes, I forgot. More surprises. We have lots of surprises.
All right, so we have the winning raffle tickets, the last three numbers. So we have 5 of Leonard's book, Grant Park, which I just reread a week ago. So the winners are 796, 797, 802, 804, and 806. So if you just go back and see Rachel on your way to cupcakes, that would be wonderful. We also have all of Leonard's books that are in circulation are available in the back to check out. So thanks again.
Thank you. Sorry, one more thing. Raise your hand if you have a library card. Awesome. Raise your hand if you don't have a library card. Don't embarrass yourself. Go get one. It's free. Thanks, everyone. And also shout out to McGeo and John Barry, who's here. They are our employee union, and we work with them very closely on making everything happen. So thank you to McGeo. Good night, everyone. Thank you.